Welcome back, everyone. And I want a huge round of applause for Aydar here. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch. Did you? All right. So, A/B testing. This topic is very popular right now, and many companies actually use them to improve their products, to build new features. I know companies who run an A/B test for any change in their code base. For example, bug fixes. They run an A/B test, and if fix of the bug performs worse, then they leave the bug in the code base. But yeah, we don't go that crazy, but we still have some experience which I would like to share with you. Well, today I'll do some introduction for those who don't know what is A/B testing. Then we go through A/B test lifecycle, and in the middle of this section, I will share some learnings about the implementation of A/B test. It will not be a super cool science, but still it has some insights. And at the end, I have small bonus for you. Before we start, let's do a short survey. Please raise your hand who know what A/B testing is. Almost everybody, all right. And who here actually has run an A/B test? Less, but still a lot. OK. So most of you actually know what we are going to talk about. But anyway, it's good to start with something for those people who actually don't have an experience with that. So let's start from the basics. Let's imagine you have an idea for your application, and you would like to introduce it in your app, and you do a user research, you receive positive feedback, people like it, but to be on safe side, you would like to roll out this feature only for 2% of users, then get feedback from real users, and if things go wrong, you would roll it back quickly. And to do that trick, you would need just this Boolean variable, which you could use it like this. If it's true, then you open this view controller. If it's false, then you open another view controller. And important thing that this feature flag has to be configurable remotely. So you first fetch a feature flag from server side, then make a decision which view controller has to be presented and present. So an A/B test is a process. When you test cases A and B on real users, then you fetch some tracking data, analyze it, and make a decision which feature actually needs to be delivered to all users. And these cases A and B could be really different. It could be like A is a blue button, B is a red button, or A is a future disabled, B is a future enabled, or it could be an ABC test, ABCD, whatever. So it's up to you and your business, actually. And each A/B test goes through the same life cycle. First, we define strategy of an A/B test. Then we implement it. Then we fetch results and make a decision. But before even start thinking about A/B test, you should consider that it's still not that cheap as you think. And yes, it's cheaper to have A/B test with negative results than just develop feature relying only on product owners' assumptions. But it's not that cheap. Actually, you do implement the feature, and you just roll back in case of something goes wrong. But it's not that cheap that you can perform it for any crazy idea you have. That's why actually running an A/B test is not proving that idea is going to affect positively. It's just actually measuring how positive will be an influence. And to ensure that feature will be welcomed by users, at Freeletics we use usertesting.com service. There you can show a prototype to random people, and they record their interaction with your prototype. They record their emotions, like if they are confused or not, and then share it with you. And yeah, you see how just random people from United States can like tap on your button and understand your flow. And our product owner and designers, they iterate through the feedbacks until they're sure that users understand the feature and they behave in a way that we want them to behave. And only after they ensure, the feature goes to the next stage of building strategy of an A/B test. So product owners go to data analysts, and they discuss things. So first, they define the hypothesis. This hypothesis answers questions like why this feature is going to have positive effect, and what actually the feature is about, and how this A/B test fits to the current stack of A/B tests which are already running. For example, if you have already an A/B test running in your onboarding flow, then probably it's not a good moment to build one more A/B test on top of the same flow, because they will be intersect with each other and it will not be a good idea. Then they define success criteria. So these criteria is like they define ways what will prove that that feature performing good. So what metrics should be measured to ensure that feature earns money or user use your application longer or whatever. They think about target for experiment. That could be like only non-paid users or recently registered users or only like English locale users or whatever. And then they align on traffic split. So what does it mean, traffic split? This is all our users, just 100%. And the most naive way to run an A/B test is this, that you run 50% of A, 50% of B. But there is a problem that, what if you want to run one more A/B test on top of that? Then, yeah, you have already like all users affected. So, and one of the ways to resolve this problem is run this A/B test only on 10% of users. Then the second A/B test could be run on another 10% of users. And then you still have like big slot for 8 more A/B tests. But having a smaller audience for your A/B test has their disadvantages. See this well-known triangle where you can choose only 2 good options of 3. It's like quickly or high quality or low price. And if we adapt this triangle to our topic, then we get shortened A/B test, high quality data, or less affected users. Since we have chosen already less affected users, then we don't want to compromise quality of the data. So we choose these 2 options, and we have longer A/B test so that we have to pay. So that was an A/B test strategy. After the feature is well defined and feature receives positive feedback and also A/B test is aligned, we go to the most interesting stage, implementation. And this implementation usually like mostly done by engineers, of course. And there are 3 main things to running your A/B test. Probably these things now will be pretty obvious for people who already run like every week run new A/B tests, but still. First part is remote feature flag system, that how you fetch the remote feature flag, how you deal with that, how you test it. Then you have to implement how you like track events. And of course, cases A and B of an A/B test. Let's go through this list, what we use at Freeletics. It's very tempting to build your own remote feature flag system. It seems really simple and straightforward, but actually it's not, because you have to consider a lot of parameters. You have to implement a lot of features, like how would you split your values between each other, like by a region, by locale, by, I don't know, by percentile, whatever. So, and Firebase, they provide the service remote config, so, and we use it at Freeletics, and I also recommend to use that. I mean, and like it looks like this. You have this list of feature flag, you have tab with parameters, and also there is a tab with conditions, where you create the list of your conditions, and an example of your condition looks like this, right? Yes. And it says that this condition is about iOS Diamond feature, and it says that it affects only like 50% of users, and it attached to the iOS Diamond feature-enabled feature flag. Then your feature flag in this parameters section will look like this, that you see which conditions actually attached to this feature flag and what value is returned in case of this condition applies, let's say. So that's how you can set up really simple A/B test, just 50-50. And a couple of words about conditions, that you can set up it not only by random user percentile, but also by application version or operating system type or device language or country or region. And for mobile clients, Firebase provides an SDK. Here is just a copy-paste from Firebase SDK documentation for iOS. And first 2 lines is just setting the remote config and setting default values. Default values are needed for if in some cases you can't fetch your remote config, then these default values will be applied. And in the second block, we just fetch remote config, and in case of success, we still have a chance if we need, like, to decide if we need to activate this fetched feature flag or not. Next is tracking events, and tracking events is it's not that much to say about. So we just use Google Analytics, obviously. It's also distributed with Firebase, so it's just a wrapper on top of Google Analytics. And here is the new code. If you haven't used that before, so it looks like that. You send an event, you provide the name of this event, in this case it's share image, and you provide the parameters, and parameters are up to you. You can provide up to 25 parameters in Firebase. Maybe this value was changed, but yeah. And we go to the interesting part, implementing cases A and B. And yeah, it's very easy to implement one A/B testable feature, but it always starts with one A/B test. Then, like, product owner, they get used to this instrument, they involve data analysts, they build an infrastructure, then you introduce new features mostly through the A/B test, and then you see that, okay, I have already more than 20 feature flags in the application. Like, huge applications have even hundreds of feature flags. And you have to really support like 2 degrees of 20 variants of your applications. And during this journey from first A/B test to the like 20 of them, we got some learnings which I would like to share. And the first learning is that you need to clarify all scenarios. What does it mean? Like, when product owner comes to you and asks for the feature, then you should ask this person, like, what happens if feature is successful, and what happens if feature is going to fail, and in overall, how long this A/B test is going to run. And usually, product owner has this answers. For example, we run an A/B test for approximately, usually it happens for 1 month or 1.5 months. But yeah, sometimes they don't have answers. For example, if you ask like, okay, what is going to happen if it fails, then product owner may have still ambitions to fix this feature and then deliver it later. So you will not be able to remove this code, but in somewhere in the future it may be useful. Then yeah. So before implementing the feature, please clarify all these scenarios. It will make your life easier, and you can decide which approach in the code, which software architecture you want to apply. And here I will bring a like simple example of bad decision I made in my past. So we had a feature where we like we had a screen where we fetched data with one workout inside from server and presented it as a list. Don't ask me how did we come to that. It just happened. And as an A/B test, we wanted to build another feature which was supposed to have the same UI, but a completely different data structure and logic behind. And to make things right, we built an abstraction, like some universal structure on top of UI. And yeah, we added, like logic became complicated. We also spent some time to implement this universal data structure. And then A/B test ran for 1 month, and then we had to again spend time for cleaning up this code because now we need only dynamic structure. Excuse me. Yes, and if I had a time machine, I would rather just build a separate stack of classes for the new feature, even if I had to duplicate some code or storyboards or whatever. And yes, I know that it looks like compromising code quality, but in this case, duplicating is not that a big issue because both cases will not be supported forever. It will be run just for 1 month. So just like don't be too perfect, let's say, in some cases. About not being too perfect, this next learning is about taking shortcuts. So the main product of Freeletics is mobile applications, which provides users experience of personal training coach. So we provide a fitness program for the week. You can train with that. So it's about sport. And we wanted to introduce new feature, which was related with the way how people train. And of course, this feature was supposed to go to be integrated to the training flow. But we also were curious if it would make sense to introduce this feature somehow to onboarding flow right after the registration. Maybe it could affect our sales better. So how could we do that? So we first developed the feature, then integrate the feature, then run an A/B test for some time, and at some point we get enough data, we make a decision, and roll out to 100% of users. And how have we done that? We first built a prototype, then integrated this prototype solution, then run an A/B test with the same duration. And in the meantime, another feature team or cross-functional team, they implemented the whole feature. They were responsible for training flow, and so they had to implement this feature. And after A/B test is finished on our side, we integrate the the complete feature, and then roll it out to 100% of users. And as you see, that we delivered this feature much faster. Of course, we spent more human hours, but if you really need to learn fast, and if you really need to finish before Christmas, for example, then this approach could be applied. Just for learning, you don't need complete feature implemented. And when I tell about prototype, what kind of prototype you can build? So for prototype, you can do assumption that, okay, let's target it only for English-speaking users, so it doesn't need to be localized. So then it should look like design, of course, because just to not affect A/B test results. And it should track user behavior for getting data to analyze. And how to build this prototype? You can prototype actually by images. When I say prototype by images, I mean that it's literally screenshot of your design. So you take screenshot of your design, present it to your users, and when product owner came to me, came to us, to my team, and suggested this, could you just take a screenshot and show, because it's not a big deal. We need to implement this fast. And we were super skeptical about this solution. We were like, what are you telling us? We are developers. We have to build good things. What are you asking about? But actually, it works. Yeah, it worked out for us. And we managed to deliver it faster. So that's an example, just schematic design of the screen we wanted to introduce. And this screen contains 3 sections. It's an image, it's some complicated UI in the middle, and a button star. And image and button, they are super easy to implement, but let's assume that this UI element in the middle is not, and we would like to build a prototype for that. And the main problem with images is that if you take a screenshot which fits to iPhone 7, it will not perfectly fit to 7 Plus. How did we resolve this problem? So we made a trick that we used an API from UI image that we could like take some pixel from the middle, or like 25 pixels or points from the right side, and stretch this image by duplicating this middle pixel. So then on bigger devices, this image would look like this, which is, yeah, it will naturally happen even with your native implementation. And on smaller devices, like usually designer make a design for iPhone 7. Now it's changed to iPhone 10. But iPhone 5 is not that smaller than iPhone 7 or iPhone 8. So you can make it smaller with keeping ratio. So it will look like this. It just became less smaller. It became smaller, but it will not look ugly at the end. Yeah, that was about taking the shortcuts by prototyping. And next learning is about cleaning up as soon as possible. So it's super simple, yes, and I know that some companies still don't have reliable processes of cleaning up code after A/B test is finished. So general advice is cleaning up the code from redundant functionality after A/B test is done, because your A/B testable feature will not be the last one, and somebody will come and somebody will have to build their own A/B test on top of yours, and we'll end up with this picture that he or she has to build 4 versions instead of 2. Next learning will not be a surprise, but still worth to mention. It's about testing. So when you implement an A/B test, just make sure that you test all scenarios, that if feature is enabled, if feature is disabled, or you could even, sometimes you need to test some combinations of feature flag. And at Freeletics, to make manual testing easier, we have this special secret settings screen where we keep like list of available feature flags, and you can manipulate, change values, and you can, after that, if you need, restart the application and test it manually. We call this screen debug panel, and it has more than just setting feature flags, but the topic is A/B test now. But manual testing is good, but not enough. We also use UI tests for ensuring our quality. And how we like implement it in our code, in our application. So I will talk about iOS implementation, but I think this approach could be applied also to Android. So we use source tree, and we have class with list of feature flags where we just put the name, and then when we have a build phase where sorcery does the job that it creates some, it brings these feature flags to UI tests, because on iOS, UI tests don't know about application code base at all. So that's how we keep them synced, and we are able to pass these feature flag values through from UI test through process info to the app delegate. And then app delegate already parses this process info and set up feature flags. Next, learning recommends to be ready for feature flag change. At some point, like until some moment, until the refactoring we had, we had an approach when we run an application and then show the main UI and then just we initiated loading feature flags, and then at some point it happens pretty quickly. The new remote config comes earlier than the moment of time when user goes to some A/B testable feature. And yeah, what happens one day is that we had a list of items. We had a screen with 3 items. And as a feature, we want to also introduce this promoting cell in the middle of the list. And yeah, we would like to A/B test that. So if feature is disabled, then it would have 3 elements. If feature is enabled, it would have 4 elements. And what happened is that, like, we enabled this feature, model was containing 4 elements, and UI was presenting 4 elements. And then at some point we disabled this feature, model reflected these changes, but UI didn't. And guess what happened when pressed this last cell, and yes, of course, we got a crash. So it didn't happen for 100% of users, but still there are many users who were frustrated because we just weren't responsible for that. But then we changed our approach to loading feature flags actually before even presenting any UI, but it's another story. So that's where some of our learnings, and let's go through them just to revise. First, clarify future scenarios, because from these scenarios, your solution really depends. Then take a shortcut if it's needed, and if it's possible, then clean up your code as soon as possible to keep it simple. Then test your cases, test all of your cases, and build tools for making this process easier. And of course, yeah, if you need, then be ready that feature flag may change. Okay. So after A/B test is done, and we fetched enough amount of data, we have to get the results, right? So usually it's done by data analysts at Freeletics. I mean, usually at Freeletics is done by data analysts. So what they need to do is that fetch track data, then process this data, and make it presentable, so to report results to product owners or to anybody. So for fetching data, which was tracked by Google Analytics, it's pretty obvious to use Google BigQuery. This service allows us to fetch track data by SQL requests. Then we have some scripts, some Python scripts for transforming this data to XLS format. And yeah, then these Excel sheets, they just now pass to product owners and they already make a decision. But we have future plans for moving this process to Chartio. Chartio is a service which helps visualize data in a nice way, because XLS tables are fine, but you still need to have a big heart to love looking into them. And let's assume that we observed 32% of conversion. Like, let's take an example. As an example, let's take a conversion of as a success matrix, and let's assume that we observed this 32%. And if we assume that this conversion is has a normal distribution, so we can build from data we tracked, we can build this normal distribution graph. And this graph reflects the probability of real value with consideration of observed value. So 32% is observed value, but it may happen that actually real conversion is 20%. And if you prolongate A/B test a bit longer, then you will see that this main jump will be on 20%, but not 32. So, but let's assume in our case it happens. It doesn't happen. So if we prolongate A/B test longer, then this graph becomes more narrow, and for real value, it becomes less probable that it really differs from observed value. So now we just touch a bit topic of statistical significance. So now let's assume we have this A/B test and we observed this two conversion rate for A and B cases, and one is 32%, one is 34%. And can we already stop an A/B test? That depends from this intersection square. And like the longer A/B test is running, the less this intersection square becomes. And we consider results as statistical significant if this intersection square takes on less than 5% of square under the graph of B case, let's say. So that means that it's not always obvious to say if B is more successful than A, because we may have these flat results when our plots stays really close to each other, and it's hard to say which performs better. Like, we just can't rely on that. So it may have, if it's negative trend, then we go with case A, with feature disabled. If it's positive trend, then we go with a new feature. And if results are flat, then future is decided by product owner. For example, if we still would go with a new design which fits better to the flow, even if results are flat. And what we got at the end of this A/B test, first we answered question, which cases performed better or the same? And also we have proven data how much better our new solution performs. And to demonstrate how hard sometimes it's to guess results of A/B test, we play a short quiz. This is the real A/B test we run at Freeletics. It's about redesigning the screen, and in the case A, it's old design. In case B, it's a new design. And now try to guess the conversion change which caused by B. So I don't know how to proceed with that, but I would like to do it in a more interactive way. So if you just raise your finger if it's A, B, or C. Could you? All right. OK, no finger, just keep it in mind. Good. Then answer is C. Who guessed correct? OK, some people. Cool. Next one is about this. This screen is the first point where we try to sell our product. And in case A, it was static screen with just the same picture, with same text, with same button, call to actions. And in case B, we implemented personalization, which depends on the source of the on advertisement where the user came from. Like from Facebook, we fetch there for a deep link and then personalize the data. And again, try to guess the results, the influence of this personalization. OK. OK, not that big. So yeah, but it's still significant that you just make a personalization and you see that people purchase 30% more often. And summing up, today we went through the A/B test lifecycle. We learned tools we use at Freeletics for implementing A/B tests. And also, I shared some learnings we got during this during implementation of A/B tests. So this is the right slide for taking picture if you want to grab all content in the presentation. So yeah, thank you.